Are you ready to revolutionize your relationship with money? Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
Pearson Ravitz' story begins with Dr. Stephanie Pearson, a passionate OB-GYN at the height of her career. But then, a shoulder injury struck during a precipitous delivery. Her dreams were shattered, leaving her unable to practice medicine. Determined to make a difference, Stephanie became an advocate for her peers, guiding them through the complex disability process. Alongside insurance expert Scott Ravitz, Stephanie founded Pearson Ravitz, a company determined to approach insurance differently. Together, they set their mission to educate and empower physicians to protect their most valuable asset, their income, and the most important people in their life, their family. Today, Pearson Ravitz serves the medical community in all 50 states. At Pearson Ravitz, they understand the unique concerns of physicians. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Ravitz builds human connections before they create quotes. Life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness or injury could leave you and your family in a devastating financial situation. But with a little planning and guidance, you can prepare for every possibility. Visit PearsonRavitz.com to schedule your consultation with a Pearson Ravitz advisor. Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician, the podcast where we dive into the world of personal finance. I'm Dr. Disha Spath, your host for today's show, and oh boy, do we have a special treat for you today. Today, we're tackling a topic that hits close to home for many in the medical field, burnout. Plus, we're going to give you the inside scoop on an upcoming course designed to help you beat burnout at its own game. Before we get started, this podcast may contain explicit language and content not suitable for young audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and the guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast platform or its affiliates. We strive to create a space for open and honest conversations, which may include the use of strong language. However, we do not endorse or encourage offensive language, and we apologize if certain expressions may be offensive to some listeners. If explicit language is a concern, we recommend listener discretion. Thank you for your understanding. Now, with that, let me introduce our fantastic guests, the brains behind the popular blog and podcast, Bitches Get Riches. Kitty wants to retire early because she just can't stand any more emails. And Piggy's secret ambition is to become a freelance firer of bad bosses. Together, they're two financially savvy, feminist killjoys in their 30s. They've even won the 11th annual Plutus Award for Personal Finance Blog of the Year. Pretty impressive, right? All right. Well, without further ado, let's welcome Piggy and Kitty, or Lauren and Jess, to the podcast. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited. I'm super excited about your blog. I remember when I was at Plutus Awards, the one time I went to FinCon, you guys just stole the show. I mean, I think you took all the awards. I was so excited to get to meet you. So tell me, okay, first, who's Piggy and who's Kitty?
I'm Jess, aka Piggy.
And I am Lauren, aka Kitty.
By the way, you guys have that worked out so well. It's so hard to know who to go first, and I didn't direct you, so amazing.
We've been doing this for a long time.
I see that. Your podcast is super entertaining, and so is your blog. So tell us a little bit about your origin stories first. Jess, if you don't mind telling us about where you come from, who you are, and how you got into personal finance.
I grew up in the New England area, and we both went to school in Boston, and we were randomly assigned roommates freshman year of college. That was a bond formed through adversity because we were two members of a forced triple in a converted brownstone and full of mice. The third member of our dorm room was just quite awful.
Bad roommate.
So we bonded with the bad roommate. And then after college, we stayed in touch. We were still really good friends. And we just started texting each other like, oh, how are you handling those student loans? And how are you saving money to get out of our crappy little apartments? We kind of realized we were learning and teaching each other as we went. And our thumbs got really tired. We couldn't keep texting each other. So we needed to start a blog to share that.
Bonding through adversity is definitely one of the strongest types of bonds, especially, as you go from college to then financial adversity of dealing with those student loans. What year did you guys graduate?
2009, as I cross myself. Spring of 2009 was not a great time.
Not a good vintage.
Enter adulthood.
Yes, I agree. That's about the time I graduated too. There's so many graduations, it's totally blending together at the moment. I graduated med school 2012. Anyway, so work backwards from there. But yes, close timing, because I remember 2008. I remember all of the crazy housing crash and trying to learn finance during this time when people were scared and adults really didn't know what to do, and the student loan atmosphere was a total mess. Nobody really cared about student loans.
No, they really didn't. And you at least went to med school, which A, means you probably had way more student loans than we did. But we both started in sort of creative and communications careers, which at the time were really not highly valued. We've both kind of worked our entire careers in these creative fields. I'm an editor. Lauren is a graphic designer, artist, brand person.
That's the official title. Word for word. You got it perfect.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. And, working in these lower paid creative fields, we've had to really be creative, no pun intended, about how to get ahead financially and how to increase our income and sort of reframe those skills so they would be valued in these higher paid industries. It worked out for us, and we're hoping it works out for other people too.
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys are here to teach us and your audience about how to do this stuff. Because, it sounds like you guys are perfectly equipped to, first of all, run a blog and do it well and find the right audience. Also to, share your journey, because we've definitely learned a lot over the years. Now we're, old women.
Old and elegant, sophisticated.
That's right. Exactly. So Lauren, tell me about your origin story. Where'd you come from and how'd you get into all of this other than meeting Jess in college?
Oh, I grew up in a very tiny town in the rural Midwest, and I have always kind of been very financially responsible, maybe too much so. I grew up in sort of a more parentified role. And so I had to take on a lot of adult responsibilities from a pretty young age and was in a position to hoard my babysitting money very preciously. And so I've always kind of been the friend who's good with money. I think everyone has a few roles that in their friend group, it's like, step up. This is the one who will help you pick out shoes for your wedding. This is the one who will tell you to dump that guy. This is the one who will explain what you're doing wrong with your 401k. I'm actually all three of those, not to brag. I'm a very useful friend.
Woman of many talents.
Can confirm.
But definitely the last one was very to this day, I get a ton of texts from people who are like, hi, how are you? Here's a photo of my kids. Sorry you haven't met them yet. By the way, can you take a look at this insurance for me and tell me if this is a good deal or a bad deal? And I'm like, yes, I will.
Here's a small anecdote about her. I don't want to give you too much credit. We are definitely in this together. But I don't know if you remember when we were in college, we were on the T, that's the subway for those who don't live in Boston. We were going somewhere and we were just asking each other questions to pass the time. And you asked me, how much money do you want to make as an adult when you graduate? And I was like, I don't know. I do not know the value of money. I've never been completely independent. I'm living in this liminal space that is college. And you really got me thinking about that because you understood exactly what the cost of living was going to be and exactly the kind of salary we would need to pay those student loans and keep a roof over our heads. So you really, by asking that one question, you kind of galaxy brained me.
I'm so happy to have done so. Isn't it incredible the way that we are sure, take $20,000, take $40,000, take $120,000 in student loan debt when you are 17 years old and do not understand how money works at all. Incredible. So sustainable. Perfect. No notes.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. If you were to ask me that question on a subway, I really would not have had an answer for you either, because even though I was going into medicine, I had no idea what doctors actually made and the difference between a primary care doctor versus a cardiologist versus a neurosurgeon. The salary difference was not even in my calculus, even until really when I was making the decision. Those were the three choices that I really wanted to pursue, or trauma surgery. I was totally all over the place, but humongous variation in salary. And I chose the lowest paying one,
which is
primary care.
Take note, med students.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God.
I don't mean to add to my own brags, but I have watched all 15 seasons of ER somewhat recently.
Oh, so you're basically a doctor.
I am a medical practitioner. I have to give no caveats whatsoever to any and all medical advice. I'll look at your moles. I'll tell you how to argue with Dr. Carrie Weaver to justify your salary because you need to stay on. Because this serves an underserved population here in Cook County, fictional Cook County.
Well, I'll tell you what, those skills of negotiation are also lacking in the medical field. I definitely have tried to negotiate in the past, and I know a lot of people that have, and some succeed, some don't. But even just getting started is such a big ask of most women, and then women physicians too. It's tough. So let's jump into, women's issues and what you guys cover on your blog. So tell me a little bit about what your experience has been like writing mostly towards women and the areas that you like to help them with.
Oh man, I'd say that the biggest issue that differentiates how we write towards women than how other finance influencers write towards sort of everyone is imposter syndrome and burnout and working the second shift and all of these sort of things that we thought when we got the right to vote, like gender equality achieved, and it really is not the case. We do focus a lot on things like mental health. On, our most recent article, I talked about my struggles with body image and weight loss and how that, compared to my comparatively easy journey with financial fitness and, maintaining healthy financial habits. I don't want to say like we're all about mindset, but we are all about recognizing that it's not as simple as just, setting up your 401k and, climbing that corporate ladder until you reach the top and you're well paid. It is very much about making sure you understand that you don't have to apologize for who you are. You don't have to couch your negotiations for salary in apologies and in, I don't know if it's the right thing for the company, or I don't know if I'm not being a team player or if I'm being a bitch by asking for this higher salary. Yeah, there's a reason we're called bitches get riches, because it's true.
I think bitches get shit done.
Bitches do get shit done.
Yes. I read that article that you wrote on how dieting and financial well-being or getting into financial shape are often compared and thought to be similar, but you actually took a contrasting point of view to that. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right that they're compared pretty often. I mean, one of my favorite YouTube channels is The Financial Diet. The word diet is right in there and they do great work. I took a contrasting view because, when it comes to my finances, I don't want to say I had an easy time, but I had an achievable time saving money and getting out of debt and reaching 100K in my investment portfolio. That was something that I could make a SMART goal for, which is something specific, measurable, actionable. Finance is math. It's all about math. You can count on it. You can count it. Whereas dieting is a very nebulous science. Fitness is not an exact one-size-fits-all solution. In my article, I write about one of my favorite athletes, Mirna Valerio, aka the Mirnavator. She is a fat ultra runner. And she redefines what people think of as fitness, because if you were to see her walking down the street, the traditional wisdom would be like, oh, she's a very unhealthy person, when in fact, she runs far more than people half her size can. It was all about me sort of separating the measurable about fitness and size, which was the number on the scale, from what the reality is about health, and realizing that while my financial health could be measured in numbers, my physical health could not.
In some ways, finance is a whole lot easier than losing weight.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's dependable. You can run the numbers, you put the money away, and it will grow. Yes, there's risk in the stock market, but in general, you'll get some average growth over time if you're in there in the stock market long enough, and you can kind of count on your financial well-being improving as you put in the effort. Whereas sometimes when you're dieting, everyone's metabolism is different. Everyone's protein needs are different.
Everyone's genetics are different. If I put $1 in my bank account, I have $1. If I decline to order dessert at a restaurant, I have not lost 1 pound. If I run 1 mile, I have not lost 1 pound. Like, there's nothing that specifically ties weight loss to an action, And I know there are some people who are like, calories in, calories out. The science is not there. I'm sorry. There is a lot of nebulous science involved, and you shouldn't shame people for not being able to, quote unquote, lose weight as easily as they can save money.
Agreed.
Not to double down on the mistake of talking about medicine to people who actually have studied medicine, but one of the things that interested us the most is we've been talking and thinking so much lately about burnout as a source of chronic stress. And one of those things that I was reading as I was doing research for this was about how the different stress hormones that our body releases as part of that sympathetic parasympathetic system, something like cortisol. When you're under stress, your body is like, ooh, I need to make like a bunch of glucose like immediately available to you so that you can run from this lion or whatever it is that's scaring you. So your body is releasing a bunch of cortisol, and cortisol is then tied to basically all the same things that we have historically attributed to being caused by obesity. Things like, hey, when you make your glucose level higher, that might put you on a path to becoming pre-diabetic or diabetic. And it raises your blood pressure and is tied to increased heart disease and kind of all of these things. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm just now starting to wrap my head around the idea that so many of the chronic diseases that we have attributed to being caused somewhat or entirely by obesity are actually probably more tightly related to stress. And stress is something that people feel a lot when they are impoverished. And that really like speaks to this longstanding conundrum where it's like, why is it that people who are poor tend to be more overweight? And there's all this stuff about like, food deserts and genetics and all these things, but also like it's incredibly stressful to be poor, especially right now in this country. And it's like, well, yeah, of course. So if our bodies are stressed, we are also then compromising our physical health as well as our mental health. And that just like blew my mind when I was reading about that.
Absolutely. I mean, yesterday I just saw a Twitter post by somebody, I don't remember who it was now, but they were like, I drank a cappuccino. There's a picture of a cappuccino and a donut. I've had this every day in Europe on my vacation and I lost 2 pounds. American diets are shit. Yes, our diet is horrible and we have so much processed food. I was thinking, well, the confounding factor here is that you're relaxed and you're not stressed.
You are on vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're probably walking around a lot more.
I've been on vacation in Europe. It's very relaxing. You walk from cafe to cafe, eating delicious baked goods and drinking tiny, cute coffees and just people watching. Like it's very, very stress-free.
Yeah, the stress, as you said, the cortisol and the fight or flight hormones put you in a survival mode, which then makes your body release this glucose, but also really want to hang on to every calorie, right? And then you start hoarding calories and your body doesn't go into the healthy metabolism that we need for it to burn fat at a slow and steady pace. It starts hoarding fat. And then anytime we're going through this like process of burning fat, hoarding it, we're creating superoxide radicals, which then increase all the inflammation in our body and make us more susceptible to heart attacks and aging, wrinkles and all that. So yeah, I mean, that is the cycle of stress. And I totally agree that being poor, I've been there when I was, a kid. Lauren, like you, we were in very dire straits when I was a kid. And I don't remember being like relaxed and chill as I am now, Yeah, it is incredibly stressful. And going to our audience here, the physician world, we'll find a bunch of unhealthy physicians when we practice, not because they don't know what the right thing to do is, but a lot of it has to do with stress and cortisol all the time. And then making poor food choices when they're working at 3:00 in the morning and eating from the vending machine, But yeah, I've seen far too many colleagues have heart attacks. You had a very interesting article on your site about the cost of recovery and putting that into your calculation for how much life your job is taking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I wrote the article. It's called The Expensive Difference Between Recovery and Relaxation or something like that. Who knows what I wrote? I can't remember. But it was a concept that I came across while reading Barbara Sloan's book, Tipped, which is a personal finance book specifically directed at tipped people in the service industry. And she was talking about how, if you work a really hard shift and you go home and you can't be productive at home, you can't raise up the energy to cook yourself a nutritious meal or go on a run or relax and play with your kids. Like that is a cost of working. That is an extension of your working hours. In that way, it's an opportunity cost. But in other ways, getting burned out or overly stressed or overly tired at work can also have a financial cost. And that financial cost comes when you need to recover from work with a coping mechanism that costs money. For example, going to the bar with your colleagues. I know I am not alone when I say that I have, indulged in many a happy hour after a stressful day of work when I'm like, hey, coworkers, let's just go drink our feelings. And, we're too exhausted to go do something healthier for us. So let's just go sit and be waited on hand and foot while they keep bringing the whiskey, bringing the beer. And that whiskey and that beer, that costs money. You can't go into a bar to relax and unwind without spending money. That article was all about sort of realizing what your recovery costs are, both financially and opportunistically, identifying ways that you can replace them with healthier and shorter recovery methods. So, for example, if you had a long day at work and it was very stressful and exhausting, you can say, you know what, I'm going to go home and I'm going to spend 45 minutes in the bathtub, just meditating, enjoying the hot water, and doing nothing very intentionally. And then once I've done with that, that will be my recovery process. And then I can move on to recreation. Then I can pursue my hobbies. Then I can play with my children or my pets. Then I can read a book for enjoyment. Do these things that we work for. We work to survive, but if you are sort of ascending the financial ladder, you don't want to just work to survive. You want to eventually work to be able to do things you enjoy and to have a life you love. So that was sort of the difference between recovery and recreation. And the solution that I sort of came upon was you need to identify the expensive recovery costs and replace them with really intentional, healthy forms of recovery so that you can more quickly move on to recreation.
I think putting a finger on the actual issue at hand does a lot to then elucidate, what you need to do in order to make it more efficient, make it better for you, work better for you. I mean, definitely doctors working shifts in the hospital, for example, hospitalists, that's the kind of work I do. A lot of us work 7 days on and then 7 days off, which means that, it sounds like the 7 days off should be all recreation. That's what we think. And we're going to hang out and, sure, we're going to bust our butts for 7 days, but then we're going to have a whole week to recover. But the thing is, you spend 2 to 3 days of that actually just recovering. And then a day prior to it, just getting ready for work again, doing the laundry and prepping the meals and stuff.
And experiencing intense psychological dread, knowing that you have to start this cycle that is stressing you out all over again.
Exactly.
So you can't actually relax.
Yeah, exactly. One of my best friends is an ICU nurse, which being an ICU nurse or a doctor, as you know, during the COVID times, probably one of the most stressful experiences in human history. But she and I, we love to go rock climbing together. We love to do, hikes and outdoorsy stuff together. I have come to learn that her recovery costs are so high that if she has one day between shifts, she cannot recreate during that one day. She's like, that whole day is dedicated to recovery. That's a huge cost for her. That's part of her work that is taking away from her life and her enjoyment.
When you start to identify that, then you can say, okay, well, then how can I make my recovery time less? And what I did, for example, was to just say no to the overnight shifts, even though they pay a lot better. The recovery cost from an overnight shift for me is an entire day. Yeah. So I can't. I'm like totally non-functional the next day. And then, once I straighten out my sleep cycle again, maybe day 3, I can get back to being like a regular person. And yeah, so I just said, you know what? It just cost me too much of my life to do that. So I'm not going to do it. And thankfully, the financial wherewithal and the financial, position that we're in, we're able to do that.
Exactly.
That's how wellness and financial fitness go hand in hand.
Imagine Dr. Emily, a skilled and passionate physician, standing at a pivotal moment in her career path. She has just received a contract offer and is surrounded by uncertainty. Is the offer fair? Does it align with her career goals? This is where Contract Diagnostics shines. Their nationwide expertise, encompassing every state and specialty, positions them as the go-to ally for physicians. When they dove into Dr. Emily's contract, it wasn't just a review. They demystified complex clauses and provided enlightening insights, tailoring their approach to her specific needs. Regardless of whether you're taking your first steps as a new graduate or navigating as an established doctor, Contract Diagnostics delivers a tailored, comprehensive contract review, perfectly suited to your individual situation. Now, it's your turn to secure your future. Reach out to Contract Diagnostics at 888-574-5526 or visit contractdiagnostics.com. Begin your empowering career journey today, and I'll be cheering for you from the other side.
Lauren, I want to ask you, how do you balance your work time and off time and make sure you have enough time to recreate?
So for me, I have ADHD, and that means that I tend to like long periods of very intense, hyper-focused work, followed by becoming a greasy smear on my own couch or an equal up to 3 times the amount of working hours a period of time is ideal for me. And obviously that just does not work at all with a traditional 9 to 5 sort of schedule. So for me, I really prioritize getting to the point where I could retire as quickly as possible. So I got there when I was 35, and I basically passed out for the next year and a half of my life. I'm going to say that kind of my math on this is that for every year that you've been working past the point of burnout, you need at least a month to just be comatose and in recovery. So if you worked, a demanding career for 10 years, you're going to need at least 10 months before you can actually start to come back to yourself and reevaluate who you are, what you like. So now that I'm retired, I get to listen to my body's own rhythm and my body's own whims. And it's very frustrating because I still live in this world where slow, steady daily work is the norm and it's prized. And I don't feel great when people say, "What'd you do this week?" And I say, "I played 200 hours of a farming simulator and I don't want to talk to you about it." But that's my reality. And then the next week, it's like, "Oh, I rewrote the Constitution to be equitable to all, and I baked 45,000 cupcakes," and, just there's no consistency with me. And now I feel like I'm finally living a life where I'm learning that that can be a perfectly great way to be. It's hard to unlearn programming, but it's very rewarding.
You bring up a good point. We all function in different ways, and our bodies and brains function in different ways. And therefore, we have to come up with different solutions and not try to fit the mold with what everyone else is doing all the time. And the answer is different for everyone. But the biggest thing is trying to be intentional about it, to think about the bigger things and read blogs like yours that make you think about it.
Thank you. I do feel like we are part of this community of personal finance bloggers, podcasters, influencers. And this community is very focused on early retirement. It's very focused on being frugal at all costs. And what you said about one size does not fit all, we need to be focused on individual solutions and, learning what your individual rhythms are. I feel like that is often frowned upon in this media community, to which I say, I'm done with that. Your example of choosing not to work the night shift, even though it makes you more money, that is so antithetical to the personal finance, run until you reach early retirement.
The fire race.
Exactly. And at this point, I'm like, well, if I want to live long enough to have an early retirement, then I need to slow down. I need to focus on things like burnout recovery. I need to focus on lowering my stress levels so that my body and my quality of life don't suffer from this race to the finish line that we're all frantically crawling over each other to get. So it's so hard to break the mold, even when you're already part of a community that claims to be breaking the mold.
Yeah, anytime you get a whole bunch of people in the same space, especially I think in social media has totally made this worse because we're all out there talking about our achievements and I'm guilty about it too. We, for the first 17 months that we took to pay off my student loans, I was like, look at how much money we're paying off. And of course I was burning out.
Of course you were.
Yes, it gets attention and that's why people put that stuff out there. But at the same time, we all have seasons in our lives. And especially for women, I feel like what made me choose to really convert to the slow fi method was to realize that I have kids, and they're only young for next 10 years. And if I spend that 10 years working my butt off to then be financially independent, right when they turn into teenagers and don't want to hang out with me, it would be completely like against what I'm trying to work for.
You can't de-age them. I hear that about children. I'm not familiar. I know how to hold one, I think.
And I was just like, that doesn't seem to fit what I want to do, actually. But having paid off those student loans in 17 months, that did help create that space so that I could make the choices, like not working the night shift. And then I had a little extra cushion in our cash flow. So everyone's solution is different, but you guys are putting out a course soon, laying out the foundation. And tell us a little bit about the course and tell me how you're going to be working with your students.
Yeah. So our course, my single is dropping. Our course is hopefully by the time this podcast is out, it will be available. If not, it will just be at the very end of a window where we are giving some priority access to our Patreon community. So if you want to, you can sneak in there too. We have talked a lot about burnout, and we kind of realized that this was a talk that we were giving a lot to like professional groups. And we realized like this is really something that we need to find the time in our lives to sit and write all of this out and really commit to it, because I think that I feel kind of the same way about burnout as I do about the concept of post-traumatic stress in like 1910. It's not really something that culturally we have grasped the magnitude of how much and how badly it can negatively impact people's lives. And in a more sort of cold and calculated sense, the cost to our economy at large when people are burned out. We really were like, we need to be talking to people who are in this situation, because when you talk to someone who's really burned out, I think oftentimes they have an impulse to rationalize away the intense negative emotions that they're feeling. And they might say, like, yes, it's hard, but things could be worse in all of these ways. Yes, it's stressful for me to be a doctor, but at least I'm not working in the ER anymore. Or, it's really hard balancing work with my child, but I have a friend who has 4 children and like she gets it all done. So who am I to complain? People are so prone to like trying to logic their own stress away. And that's so admirable. And that works in our brains. It doesn't work in our bodies. It doesn't actually make you less stressed. The metaphor that I like to use is that's like saying, I couldn't possibly be hungry right now because there are people overseas who are starving somewhere. And it's like, well, that's just because that part is true. It doesn't mean that your body doesn't have its own needs. And to imagine the needs of others is kind of like an apples to oranges comparison. Your body is stressed. Your body is stressed out right now. And thinking about how there are other people who are even more stressed makes you more stressed. It's been a labor of love for us to really try to be the voice that gives you permission to feel your own feelings and to acknowledge how much you're suffering. Because I think both Jess and I have been in situations where we were burned out and both of us needed at least one intervention, basically, from someone externally to say, like, you're not okay. And you keep saying you're okay. And it's very, very obvious to me, your friend, your coworker, your partner, that you are not okay. And I need to push you to make a change in your life. And we want to bring that spirit to everyone who takes our course.
Exactly. We kind of dismiss the power of accountability and honesty. Like Lauren said, we've both needed interventions, but we want to sort of evangelize this burnout sensitivity and this willingness to be open about it. If we can be the ones teaching people like, hey, it's okay to acknowledge your burnout so that you can do something about it, we want other people to take those lessons and then be a force in their life. to admit like, hey, I'm burned out. I'm really stressed. It's really affecting not only my work performance, but my overall life quality and physical health. And we want them to be open about that so that more people will start acknowledging their burnout and start doing something about it. Really, we envision this utopian future where stress is like not a known term. Like people just are like, what is this stress of which you speak?
It sounds lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
So are you guys going to be covering financial fitness along with the course, or is it solely about burnout?
So it's pretty exclusively about burnout, although we talk about all the ways in which your financial situation may impact your ability to take action. Because I think one of the main reasons that people end up talking themselves into staying in a workplace or a relationship or a role where they are experiencing chronic stress every day, money is like kind of the number one reason that they feel I can't walk away from this. And that is something that we do kind of talk through in the sense that you totally can strategically choose to expose yourself to chronic stress for money. That's something you can do. That's something I've done. Probably you both have done as well. And I think if I said, I'm going to subject you to the most stressful situation that you can imagine for 30 seconds and you'll get $30 million. It's like, well, yes, everyone would agree. But if I said, I'm going to subject you to the most stressful situation imaginable, and it's going to be over the course of 30 years and you'll be paid $14 an hour, you'd probably be like, nein, danke. No, I'd really rather not.
And yet that's literally happening for people.
There's a point in which that can be strategic, that decision. And there's a point in which these sort of more depression and anxiety presentations of burnout, that depressed and anxious reaction to stress is driving you to feel trapped in your situation and to say, well, I don't have a choice. It has to be this way. I have to do everything around here. And that's not logical. That's not strategic. And there is a line there. And we hope that we can help people find it.
That sounds like your course would be so beneficial to so many women I know and are just kind of thirsting for someone to show them their individual way out, or at least discuss it and validate it.
The course was actually inspired by, we did a couple of speeches last year for nonprofit organizations. One was a group of primarily teachers and nonprofit workers in Massachusetts, and the other was public servants in Colorado. These are people who are giving so much of themselves in their professional lives that they have nothing left over for their personal lives and their personal goals and their health and their happiness. And what we sort of found, that those speeches were based on financial self-care specifically, but most of the questions we got were from these wonderful human beings who were so overworked and underpaid, being like, okay, yeah, that all sounds great, but like, how do I do it when I want to keel over and die every day? So we were like, okay, well, this specific demographic of people really needs someone to tell them like, it's okay to focus on your health. And, what's the cliched saying? Like they need to know that they need to put their oxygen masks on first before they help others. And our hope is that through the Burnout course, people become not only better versions of themselves, but like better at, serving the communities that they serve, especially when we're talking about teachers, healthcare workers, public servants and small government workers. These people, we rely on them. So if they are burned out to the point where they cannot function as human beings, like we're all suffering.
Next question was, is there a community they can join along with your course?
So our Patreon community is a great place for all of Bitch Nation to come and chat. We're actually offering the course to our patrons first so that they can kind of be our beta readers or our guinea pigs and we can test it out on them. But they are very good at talking to each other. And I love it when they sort of take the reins and they help each other. And I think your question is very informed by the fact that, you have this great community of healthcare workers who follow you and who communicate with each other. And I think our role in this space is to start the conversation and give them some guiding questions, some exercises, and getting the ball rolling for them to kind of take it from there, because our experience is not universal. We are two college educated people who grew up in mostly stable families and graduated with student loans. Listen, we're all dog moms. I think we can put our similarities there. But, our experience is not universal. Everyone's different. And we learn all the time so much from our community of bitchlings, as we call them. And our hope is that people will sign up for this course and they will get engaged in the conversation, and we will learn from it and other people will learn from it. So we don't all go through this alone.
What's interesting is, from our perspective, burnout is still very, very understudied. However, there is one population that has really begun to be the subject of serious study when it comes to burnout, and it actually is medical professionals. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that medical professionals, by virtue of the structure of their training, are expected to go through very disruptive and grueling work schedule cycles that kind of like guarantee you're going to feel burned out at some point. The mistakes that someone might make as a burned out medical professional are very costly, both to people and in terms of money. And I think they are a group that is uniquely prone to burning out. One of the things that we talk about a lot are, what are the personality traits that makes someone prone to burning out? And a lot of those will be present in people who chose to study medicine, people like idealists, people like perfectionists, people who have a history of being people pleasers. Those are all personality traits that can, in the right situation, drive someone easily toward burnout. So I think it's so important for people within this community where burnout is so normalized. From what I understand, it's just like, welcome to medicine. I went through this, so you have to go through it. There are some people who can do this no problem with no complaints. And so that's the standard you need to hold yourself up to. And that kind of community building is so harmful because you're all teaching yourselves to want less, to expect less, to settle for norms that don't have to be this way. Every industry that burns people out like this, I'm confident that there is another way to do it, but that it requires a substantial amount of people within that community coming together and being honest with how deeply they're struggling to begin to shift the expectations and the conversations around kind of how the industry seems to almost pride itself on running at a breakneck, unsustainable pace.
A culture of martyrdom, which when I worked in the book publishing industry, it's hilarious because people's lives are not at stake when publishing books. And yet we still had that same sort of group martyr complex where we were like, well, we need to push ourselves to the brink. We need to work our fingers to the bone. And if you're not doing that, then like, you're not one of us and you should get out. And it's a totally unhealthy sort of method of building community that just perpetuates this really toxic mindset and leads directly to burnout. So again, it was not open heart surgery, but it was very unhealthy for the people sort of engaged in that culture.
I think you're totally right. Generational trauma is basically how I see it with the healthcare workers pushing other healthcare workers to, burn out just like they did and now that you're burned out, like you've passed the test, you've sacrificed everything in your life to be a good doctor. I think in every industry, there's an equivalent of that. For us, it's brain surgery or heart surgery, but everything is a job after a while. And then after a while, you just have to really be honest, like you said, with yourself about how much of my life do I still want to reserve for me and my family? And is this job going to be with me at my deathbed? It's not.
Your job doesn't love you like your family does.
Exactly. Yeah. Agreed. It definitely needs to be talked about more. I think healthcare workers are prime subjects for this. CME for burnout is all over the place, and you can find it in many different places. Wherever you do, it's fine. And I would encourage you to find this course and see if you can get into the Patreon community and try it out. Just take the time to just sit down with yourself and ask yourself these questions, because it is important for not just ourselves, but also the sustainability of healthcare, because we know that our system is already broken and there have to be ways to fix it. And working on ourselves first is the first step. Where can they find you if they want to come and join?
You can do all of this at bitchesgetriches.com, and you can check out our Patreon community at patreon.com/bitchesgetriches.
Well, thank you so much. I know a lot of people that would be interested in this. You guys make sure you go and check that out. Lauren, Jess, thank you so much for all of your time. It was such a lovely conversation, and I'm so glad you guys are doing what you're doing. Any other last bits that you guys would like to cover before we sign off?
Be excellent to each other.
Thank you for joining us on this special episode of Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Piggy and Kitty from Bitches Get Riches and found their insights valuable. If you have any questions or want to learn more about their work, you can find them on their blog and social media channels. Be sure to check out their upcoming course and continue your journey to financial independence. You can catch them on Instagram at Bitches Get Riches Official, YouTube at Bitches Get Riches, Tumblr, and Threads. I also have these in the episode's show notes. That wraps up this segment of Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician. If you found today's discussion helpful, please don't forget to subscribe for more episodes where we explore the world of finance and well-being. Remember, investing in your well-being is always worth it. Until next time, stay frugal, y'all. Now, a final word from our sponsor. At Pearson Rabbits, they understand that life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness, injury, or catastrophic event could put you and your family in a devastating financial situation. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Rabbits builds human connections before they create quotes. Visit www.pearsonrabbits.com today and embark on your journey to safeguarding your future.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.